In a sealed glass case in Jerusalem, a fragment of parchment the size of a playing card contains 6 lines of Aramaic. They describe a place beneath the earth with 4 separate chambers and 4 distinct populations, a structure that looks nothing like the version of hell taught by Western churches. This text belongs to the Book of Enoch. It is older than every book of the New Testament and was part of the Second Temple Jewish tradition that Jesus grew up in, the very framework that shaped early Christian beliefs about death and judgment. Its popularity in the ancient world was immense. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were unearthed in 1947, 11 separate copies of Enoch were found in the caves. That is more copies than researchers found of most books currently in the Bible. Despite its foundational role, the text vanished from Western scripture for 17 centuries. It was labeled forbidden and dangerous, leaving a gap in the historical record that is only now being filled by the fragments found at Qumran. The removal of the Book of Enoch was a deliberate administrative act. In 364 CE, the Council of Laodicea officially stripped it from the recognized books of Christian scripture, beginning a centuries-long period of suppression. Jerome, the translator responsible for the Latin Vulgate, excluded the text because its descriptions were, in his view, too precise. He believed the detail provided in Enoch's afterlife exceeded what had been officially revealed to the Church. St. Augustine also famously argued against the circulation of these detailed accounts. He suggested that a structured afterlife would lead people to calculate their own standing, rather than simply fearing God and relying on the Church's interpretation of judgment. A vague, undifferentiated hell is easier for an institution to manage. A system with specific, transparent criteria for each chamber poses a threat to institutional control because it leaves no room for the Church to mediate or interpret the outcome. Enoch's account describes the afterlife as a cistern, deep, sealed containers keeping populations apart. It functions as a record-keeping system, not just punishment. Placement depends on what remained legally unresolved at death, operating like an archive where cases are filed separately until a final proceeding. The first hollow is reserved for the ordinarily righteous, decent people who died without great sin. They are held in a condition of rest under a spring of bright water, waiting for a judgment that has not yet taken place. This challenged Western doctrine because it suggests the righteous are not yet in their final destination. They are currently in a holding state, clearly proving that in Enoch's framework, the end has not yet arrived for anyone. The second hollow holds the spirits of victims of violence, people killed without justice whose murderers were never punished on earth. These spirits are not at rest. They make a continuous sound like rushing water, a legal complaint formally lodged in the divine record. They are waiting for their cases to be officially heard and entered into the divine accounting. This ancient description of pending action mirrors findings in modern near-death research. Dr. Sam Parnia's studies on cardiac arrest patients document a consistent psychological state defined by a distressing awareness of unresolved accounting or unfinished business. 2 sources separated by over 2,000 years describe the same phenomenon. Enoch's Aramaic fragments and modern resuscitation data both identify a restless state triggered by a sense of incomplete consequence at the time of death. The third hollow is designated for sinners who committed crimes but received their full, complete punishment while they were still alive. Because they paid their debt before death, their legal account is technically settled. These spirits are not tortured, but they exist in a dim state. They are described as scattered grain, isolated and unconnected from both the righteous and the unavenged dead. This isolation is the natural consequence of their actions. While their legal debt was cleared by punishment, the human connections damaged by their sins were never restored, leaving them entirely in a state of permanent, unending separation. Enoch's system implies that settling an account does not repair the damage done to others. The isolation of the third hollow is a reflection of the absence left behind when a person's connections to their community are severed. The fourth hollow is the only chamber described as permanent, characterized by darkness and a heat that has no visible flame. It is the most severe destination in the system, but its entry requirements are highly specific. This chamber does not hold ordinary sinners. Thieves, liars, and individual wrongdoers who were not punished in life are notably absent from this description. The fourth hollow is reserved for those who helped wickedness continue. These are the enablers, people who protected wrongdoers, sustained harm in others, and ensured that wrongdoing could persist after it would have naturally stopped. Jerome and Augustine found these specific criteria difficult to accommodate. A system that damns the enablers of wickedness creates a standard that an institution cannot simply resolve through traditional absolution, especially if the institutional structures themselves are what keep the harm alive. The suppression of this specific afterlife model continues into the present. In 2018, researchers attending a comparative analysis of the Enoch fragments were denied access to 2 pieces of the text detailing this 4-chamber system. These fragments were listed as undergoing conservation by the Israel Museum, a status that has effectively halted scholarly study of the most specific afterlife descriptions in the entire Enochic corpus. The Book of Enoch suggests that the most enduring consequences are reserved for those who provide the infrastructure for harm. It identifies the preservation and enabling of wickedness as a distinct, permanent category of sin. This ancient parchment remains physically locked away, its specific warnings about systemic complicity still waiting for a thorough public hearing after 17 centuries of silence.